so having completed a wonderful dynamic piece of animation with moving camera, which is shot cam, we're going to render it. So I'm going to go here. I'm going to change the image format from EXR to PNG for this exercise. I need to change this from name single frame to name hash dot extension, hash being the number of the frame. A start frame is going to be 1, end frame is 140, which is the end of that there. Cool. Okay, so we've got that set up. Renderable camera is shot cam. I'm going to delete out any that we don't want, but shot cam is there. And we've got the preset to HD 1080, which is 1920 by 1080, so standard HD. Having done that, we're going to move over to AOVs, and we can say that we want to save some stuff at separate layers. AOVs, arbitrary output variables, great name. RGBA, that's your beauty pass, that's the one that's got everything in it. And then we're going to save out diffuse. That's our color layer. Coming down, we're going to go emission. So that's the lights. Anything that shines by its own shader is emission. We could do transparent sheen if we had fabrics in them, various bits and pieces. But in this one, I think the next one is specular. That's all the shininess in there. We could have transmission, but I don't think we've got anything that's particularly like that. So of the things that we can do something useful with, it's those ones. The other thing we can do is add a custom shader, which I'm going to go AO, which is ambient occlusion. Now that isn't ambient occlusion yet, that's just a holder called AO. If I go to the attribute editor, having just loaded it, it will give me that node. If you've not got it loaded, or you go somewhere else first, you can go select AOV node and it'll come up here as a selection. Where it says custom AOV, I'm going to open the box at the end there. It's going to go what shader you want. I'm going to go Arnold shader, and ambient occlusion is there, and I'm just going to leave it as default settings. And so now what's going to happen is I've got, this is where we've been working, we've got bug, so that's our project thing. I'm going to save to bug out now, I think. So let's see what we've got. I'm going to close this one. I'm going to move across from the modeling menu to the rendering menu. I'm going to the render tab and go render sequence, and have a look at this one here. Open that. And so it's going to render from the current camera. It's going to render the timeline. It's going to use the settings that we've got there, but we can go alternate file location, and then I can go to student bug. That's where we are normally. And instead of scenes, we can go up there and go bug out now and go select folder. And that's going to go right. I'm going to render into that. And then we can hit render sequence. So that's going to use all my processor capacity. So I'm just going to say I will hit render sequence now. In fact, I suppose we can see what that looks like. And it will start to render. So now if I go back to that folder as it starts to render, now that bug out now folder, which was empty previously, it's now got ambient occlusion, beauty, diffuse, emission, specular. So those are the things that we asked for it to render separately, and we can go there. And it's starting to render and make that file the first frame there. So what we're going to do is we're going to let that render those frames out, and then go on, find those frames at the end of it, probably sometime tomorrow, and look at compositing them in Aftereffects. Here you can just see that frame starting to render there. So we'll go ahead, render everything out, and then look at compositing in the next piece of this video. Right, so having rendered everything out, I've got my output file here. See what that's done is when it's rendered it, it's rendered everything into separate folders. So there's the ambient occlusion pass, beauty with everything in it, Diffuse is just the colour. Emission is just the glowy bits. And specular is just the shiny bits, which show up a lot more towards the bottom of the film, because that's when he pulls the sword out, which is shiny. So there you go. So they're the different passes we've got now. So all we've got to do now is pull them into After Effects. So we go File, Import, File, plug out now. And we're going to start with beauty, because that's everything. So we're going to do that. As soon as you click on the first file, it goes PNG sequence has been detected, import. It gives you the render name, which is not great. So I'm going to hit return, which allows us to rename it, and go RGBA, because that's everything. So that's our first beauty pass. It's brought it in at 12 frames a second, because I've set this to be 12 frames a second. So that's fine, so it knows how big it is and what its frame rate is. So what I can do now is I can bring that down here and just drop it on that little film slide thing. And what that does is it makes us a new sequence at the right proportions. So I'm going to go fit, and there you can see, so if I hit return, it will do its first playback pass. It's nice and slow at 12 frames a second, but that's okay. So that's the animation we did, which is passable. There we go. Cool. So it looks all right, but we can do so much more with it. So what we're going to do now is go File, Import, File, and then we're going to go back up to Bug Out now. We're going to go Diffuse, which is just the colour, and then import that sequence. I'm going to hit return to rename it and call it diff, because I can't spell diffuse. And then I'm going to pull it down here and just put it above RGBA. So that covers it up, which we don't want, but we want to be able to enhance the level before with the diffuse. I'm going to right click on it and go blending mode, and I'm going to go add. So that will add in the colour on top, and you see it brightens it right up. But that could be too much. So I'm going to go to transform node, and where its opacity is there, I'm going to bring it down to about 50%. And so that adds in colour, but it doesn't add in too much. So it just brightens the shit scene and gives it a bit more definition. That looks alright. And so we can play with other bits as well. We can go File, Import, File, and we're going to go for specular. So this is the shininess. Import that, hit return, call it spec, and then drag it down and put it on top. And again, this is just the shiny, gleamy stuff. So we can right click and go blending mode, add, and that will brighten up the shines on everything. It might be just a little bit too shiny. Let's have a look at how shiny the sword looks. Yeah, because we've got some motion blur in there. We've got some noise in the motion blur. It's not amazing, but it will do. So it's nicely bright. Let's just see what difference it makes. So if I take it off, you can see how much shinier it is. It's okay, but it's a bit bright, so I'm going to bring it down to about 70. So it's added some shine, but not too much. Okay, cool. Now the fun one is going to be File, Import, File, and then we go up and we're going to go Emission. So emission is the glows. So I'm going to hit return and go emit. Drag emission down on top. And so now you can see that it's just those glowy bits, including his glowy eyes. And so I can right click on emission, blending mode, add. And so it bakes through, especially where those shines are there. But what we can do with this one, which is quite good fun, is if we go down to effects and presets over here, we can go blur. And we can find Gaussian blur, which is down here somewhere, that one. The 32-bit one. And we're going to drop it on emission. And then we're going to go, let's have a look at 30. And so now you can see it puts a glow around everything there. And so we can go 60. See, that's quite nice. But maybe thin it down a little bit. Because what I want to do is I want to thin it down to about 50. And so we've got that sort of that thin halo filled around. And then we're going to get it, and I'm going to control copy and then control paste. And so we've got emission 2. Effects, Gaussian blur. And then this one, where it's a 60, I'm going to go 30. And so we've got like 2 blurs, one inside the other, that will shell out. And then this one is at 50. And so we'll make it just a bit bolder, make it 70. And so the inner one is thicker than the outer one, which is quite nice. Cool. And that gives this sort of like halo glow, makes everything look more ethereal. And it includes his eyes glow as well, which is quite nice. So now we've done that, and that's the comp. And to just sort of like show you what we've done, if we hide all the other layers, bump, 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 I've just remembered we've forgotten a layer. That's the original RGB, so that's what you get out if you just ask for everything. And then you come through, and then you get that when you've comped it all up, which is a lot more sexy. Now we've got another layer to come in. So I'm going to go import, file. Just remembered that we've got ambient occlusion as well, which are these guys. So ambient occlusion, which I'm going to go AO, ping, return, we get that, and then stick that on top. Yep. So ambient occlusion is sometimes called a dirt pass. You can see this sort of like line where you might assume dirt might accrue, but actually it's a proximity shader. It says if something's close together, I'll put a shadow there or a darker area. So the closer something is together, then the more that there is a shadow in there. And so that one, you can add it in and it'll just enhance the shadows, and it gives it punches the 3D-ness of everything out a little bit. So I'm going to right click. It's not an add. This one goes in as a multiply. Okay, and then it just makes it. So if I take it out, and then you can see. So it darkens everything down, but it makes everything sort of rounder, which is quite nice, but it's probably too dark. So now I can go, you can do two things with it. You can either bring that down to 50, which will allow the scene to punch back up, but it will still have that 3D-ness on it. Or you could leave it in at its full value and then put an adjustment layer on top and then brighten the whole thing up with an adjustment layer. Either works. But you might get slightly more of the effect from the AO if you did it with an adjustment layer. But I'm going to leave it like that, which is great. So now I can go File, Export, Add to Media Encoder Queue, and wait for it to open. And so you have two choices with the export. You can either, if you're in the middle of making a bigger film, you would export it as an image sequence, so it could be then act as an uncompressed sequence of images and be pulled into a video editor, so you wouldn't get any compression errors, so you could go back out as PNG sequences or EXRs. But for us, what we're doing is just we're making this little film, this little sequence, so we can export it directly as a H.264, which is there. Actual animation done is there, but we're going to put it somewhere else. Actually, let's just do it at the top here. So bug out now. So that's where it came from. I suppose we could put it in there. So mpic4, save, press the little green arrow to make it do it. It thinks about it. I'll speed this up in the video. Let's go find it. So there's a folder, and underneath our passes is actual animation done.